The Gospel of Mark. Scribes and Pharisees, Mark 2:16. Hello. We've been studying Mark. We've been going through his book, and so far we have completed 25 devotions. That means this is the 26th devotion. In our previous devotion, we looked at Mark chapter 2, verse 15. Jesus and his 4 disciples had went to Levi or Matthew's house. Jesus had recently called him to become his 5th disciple. He was a follower of Christ. He wanted to honor Christ now. What did he do? He gave him a big feast, a banquet at his house. And there was another reason for the feast. He'd made the decision to quit his job as a tax collector, his old life put away. There were many people at the house, and as he reclined at table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. Mark 2:15. There were many people there. There were tax collectors, and many of the tax collectors had probably worked with Matthew for years. The Jewish people of long ago during that time, they believed that tax collectors, prostitutes, and Gentiles who worshiped false gods, all of them were sinners. That was the perspective. Let's see the next verse. And the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Mark 2:16. Okay, let's try to imagine this scene. We're in a big room full of people. It's a big feast. There were people there for different reasons. The tax collectors were there, and the reason they were there, they wanted to know why Matthew had quit his job all of a sudden. Jesus called Matthew, and he just left. He left all his things there, the money and everything, just left it on the table. Jesus had the power to call Matthew, touch his heart, and he would follow him. The tax collectors, they couldn't understand what had happened to Matthew. They couldn't understand it. There were other people there for different reasons. Some were attracted to Jesus' teaching and his preaching. They wanted to go wherever Jesus was. The scribes and the Pharisees, well, they were there also. They were curious to see what Jesus was going to do. They had great biblical knowledge. Remember that. We've talked about that before. They didn't want Jesus usurping their authority over the Jewish people. According to history, about 200 years before Jesus was born, the Pharisees were established. They were founded. Now they were strict teachers of the Mosaic law to keep it and obey it. That was good, yes, but since Jesus was here on earth, the rabbis, which meant the Jewish teachers, they were highly respected. And they were in this group of Pharisees. The rabbis, these rabbis, they twisted the law so that it would apply to life, and it seemed like the Jewish people were doing wrong. This divided the group of the Jewish people. The Pharisees, scribes, well, they thought of themselves as very holy, but they thought all other people were sinners. That was their perspective. In recent verse that we looked at, the religious leaders, they had said to Jesus' disciples, "Why does Jesus sit with tax collectors and sinners?" Of course, they wanted to make Jesus look bad. And the reason he was sitting with sinners, oh, this is wrong. That's what they were trying to do, trying to hurt Jesus' reputation and make his disciples think that Jesus did not have the authority from God. Let's look at verse 16 again. And the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Mark 2:16. Hmm. Jesus heard them. He heard the scribes and the Pharisees talking to his disciples. Jesus knew what they were trying to do to hurt him, to discredit him. In our next devotion, we will look to see what Jesus says to them. Coram Deo.
To live coram deo is to live one's entire life in the presence of God, under the authority of God, to the glory of God. Everyday Breadcrumbs, Devotional Studies for the Deaf by Brad and Tammy Schaaf, taught in American Sign Language by Brad with voiceover by his wife Tammy. All verses from English Standard Version. BradDaleSchaaf@gmail.com